Hey everyone, it's your friend Joseph Craven with Roe Hunter and our co-host Puppy Radar O'Reilly up here in my lap, licking my face, getting onto my headphones, just being adorable. This is the first episode of the Weekly Pessimist. You may ask yourself, how did I get here? You may ask yourself, what is the Weekly Pessimist? That's going to be our Mississippi State specific series that we will do on running out the clock. Named so because Mississippi State fans are legendary pessimists.
Named after ancient Indian chief, Pessimism.
Is that
buried in the field? That's his name. They tried to name him Possum, but it came out as Pessimism. It's gonna be Chief Possum because there's possums out in the woods. But it's Pessimism. He's buried right in that 50-yard line. Davis Wade.
I had no idea. This is a stunning revelation for me. Didn't know the lore of this, but we're going to try to do a few more team-specific episodes or series on the podcast in particular, because while we, try to watch as much as we can of the SEC games, or at least keep up with everything, there are obviously teams that we are all individually going to pay closer attention to. And if we can ever resist bias, then it'll work out well. But chances are we're just going to sound like a bunch of idiots talking about our favorite teams or some nonsense. So, but we figure we give it a try. Why not, right?
Why not? Yeah, dude, why not? What we got to lose,
At this point, nothing. That's right. The Mississippi State Bulldogs, of course, 0-2 in conference play. Hello, darkness, my old friend. That's just been running in my head ever since the weekend. Things looking bleak, looking rough. Shades of 2001 popping up in a lot of fans' minds. Offensive ineptitude with a highly promising roster. Should have the world on a platter, but instead we are struggling through two difficult-to-stomach losses, including one that might be one of the most devastating losses since way back in last November and the Egg Bowl. Wow. This is the current state of the program.
Wow. Get it as the wheels are coming off, as Radar's saying in the background there.
Yeah.
You can hear it squeaking around.
That is what's the term when something makes the sound onomatopoeia? I
have no idea. You're asking the
I believe that's the term when a sound exemplifies a word. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. Yeah. Things are looking rough. Let's talk a little bit about Florida in particular. The Florida game. Man, I never should have taught this dog where the squeaker is. She was perfectly fine gnawing on all the other parts of her chew toys. Then she found the squeaker and was like, game over.
Game over. I got it. I will squeak forever.
The Florida game, you can say whatever you want about it. It was bad. It was offense couldn't get anywhere. Less than 100 passing yards. Was it even like barely 200 yards of total offense, just kind of in general? Not what we were expecting, not what we've grown used to in the past several years, and not even what we thought after the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes down to, it seems like, the lack of, running back usage, especially in the second half. Does that seem about right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. This is a offense designed to run all of it, the way and so now you see kind of the product of that too. I've been wondering too, with this whole sitting Nick for that game, I'm wondering how much of this has really affected him and him like catching up with what's going on in the offense. I have no way of knowing, but hindsight being 2020, maybe not the best decision, because it feels like that would be vital playing time for him to like connect with receivers and
he really could have used a tune-up game. I guess he had at least one tune-up game against Stephen F. Austin though. Wait, no, Stephen F. Austin was the first one.
The first one,
Louisiana, Lafayette, the Ooh La La, the Raging Cajuns. He did have that game. Kansas State, a little bit tougher opponent, but even then, I mean, they're looking bad. So he's had time to tune up, you would think, but I don't know. The thing about Nick that gets me right now, the thing about him is that there were so many questions coming into, the year about is he going to be able to be the type of passer that Mississippi State needs to fit in that Joe Moorhead offense. And I feel like, to his credit, he has done almost everything. He's a hardworking guy. That was the talk about him since he arrived on campus, was how hard he worked. He arrived on campus when Prescott was still established as the starter, and essentially told Prescott, "Hey, I'm coming for your job." Was kind of the attitude that he brought into work. So he works hard at it, and he's answered a lot of those questions with passing accuracy, dropping some. I remember the Louisiana game, dropping some absolutely precise passes. And then, of course, the pass to Cyrus Mitchell that Cyrus Mitchell messed up in the Florida game.
You can't throw that ball any better.
Nick seems to be putting in the work, and it seems like other players are not, and that the coaches aren't working with him.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, like, I think what's very frustrating about it to watch, it's like all the ingredients are there, but I think that's just part of transition. How to learn how to like relate to the coach, what the coach wants, all that kind of stuff. And ultimately, I mean, how much of this is Joe Mo's fault? How much the player's fault? Whatever. I don't like to even do the blame game. It's just you kind of call it for what it is. This is a team that is performing poorly because mostly of communication issues. This is an undisciplined team in every facet of the ball. How many offensive starts or false starts or whatever have we had in the last 3 games?
Right.
Like that just shouldn't be an issue. I know it's going to be for I could be okay with 1 or 2, maybe 3 a game. But my goodness, I mean, like, how many did we have last game? I think we cleaned up a little bit last game.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad against Florida, but Kentucky was terrible.
Yeah.
We actually passed it on to Florida for most of the game.
That's so true.
I mean, coming into the season, you had a 5th-year quarterback, 3-year starter. You had 2 dynamic running backs. You had what looked like Radar's back at it. She's back at it. She found her toy squirrel, and that's her favorite toy. Her favorite toy. You had more depth at wide receiver, supposedly on paper. They were unproven, obviously, and still are. But in particular, you had 4 returning starters on the offensive line.
Yeah,
4 returning starters. Depth. Or worlds of experience, deep experience there on the offensive line, and they're pulling false starts like that constantly. They're just missing blocking side, and that's what I think. To me, that seems like they were an offensive line that worked well in one scheme, and Moorhead is not using their strengths. Maybe it could just be we missed having Coach John Hevesy around because he was an incredible offensive line coach.
Yeah,
but. I mean, at this point, and it begs the question, with all the offensive weapons that were just mentioned, with the defense being – the offensive line came out of last season with, statistically speaking, one of the better offensive line performances in the country.
Right.
To pull what they're doing is the most mind-boggling thing, I think, of it all here. But the defense being what it was with good linebackers and a stellar defensive line, to drop those 2 games, it almost feels, even for a first-year head coach, and even with a transition period that we thought would be easier than it was, it almost seems inexcusable to drop both of those 2 games. Is that outrageous to say that?
No, not at all. I mean, you got to have a successful season, or the one that you would hope to have with a team like this. You have to win one of those 2 games. I think everybody knew that. At least the fans did. It seems like. I don't know if our football team did, You have to win one or both of those games. You can't lose both of them. And now this feels like a tipping point, especially losing to Dan, which, that was part of the joke, the lateral move. But it's clear that after this game, at least, it's clear that only one of these parties was foolish, and that they all wear maroon. And so I think that's the issue with it. This losing to Mullen in that fashion was such an inept offense, and pretty much Dan and company, dude, they manhandled our defense. They went around all the weak spots, used what we're good at against us. And you couldn't play our team more perfectly than what Dan and Todd Grantham did. And I credit to them. They recruited all the players. They know all the scheme. They know what works. They knew all the tendencies. So credit to them taking advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's and I think that's what is one of the reasons it's been so frustrating to look at a loss like that, is because if you watch the game, there was very little that Florida did that made them look like a good team. They didn't look unbeatable. The only touchdown that was scored was off of a trick play.
Right.
But as you just said, Mullen came in knowing, okay, if I have to stop Montez Sweat off the edge, if I have to stop Jeffrey Simmons, Braxton Hoyette, Gary Green, if I have to stop that defensive front, those linebackers, then the way to do that is to quick bubble screen like every play.
Pretty much.
And that's what he did. It was, you get the ball snapped into Franks' hands, and within like a second, Franks turns, completes a bubble screen. That's how you beat a pass rush. You don't ever give them a chance to do anything, and then you just hope that your wide receivers can make a play happen. And most of the time they did. So yeah, absolutely, they came in with a game plan that worked. And I think the super simplified version that I saw somebody on Twitter say, who I think was from Dog's Bite magazine. I'm trying to give credit where credit is due, but the super simplified version was that was an experienced SEC coach who went to a program, looked at what he had and said, okay, this is what I can do with it. It's not where I want it to be, but this is what I can do with it, versus an inexperienced coach who went to the program, said, this is what I have, but this is what I want to do with it, and I'm going to do this, and hasn't adapted to it, which is, Kroom-esque in a lot of ways. The stubbornness there. But let's talk about Moorhead a little bit here, because there's this weird. I always feel like it's super weird. When you've got a new coach, you can't really judge a new coach in one season, unless they come in and completely bankrupt the school or something. You can't really judge a coach in one season, but this is still a coach who inherited a top 25 program with a lot of tools to have instant success. The fact that he's not having success, does this seem like a bad hire? What do we even say with it? I don't want to overreact. I feel like people who say it's a bad hire overreact, but how in the world do we properly assess the situation right now with Moorhead and what he's doing?
Well, it's you can't react to it because it is. If Osiris Mitchell catches that stupid pass,
oh my gosh,
totally different ball game. Totally different. And who knows how it turns out if he catches that ball?
Right.
Who knows?
It killed all offensive momentum. And then when the defense came back out, you could tell they were exhausted from having been the only side that was actually performing.
Right.
Right. And they got tired, which is. Reminds me of the Kroom era. Those good defenses did all they could. The offense didn't move. The defenses were just worn out by the end.
Yeah, and so that's why I say you can't react to it too much. To call for this guy, fire Jomo. Who are we going to get? Who is the person that's going to come back and replace what Dan just did? That would, to me. I think we'll see in the next 4 years or so how special Dan really is. If he's a great coach, if he's a bad coach, if he can change Florida and bring them back to Urban Meyer prominence era, whatever. We'll see in the next few years. But that's the problem. How do you measure what type of coach that a Mississippi State program should have, because we were definitely not a top 25 program not that long ago, and we were able to get back in that fighting or get back in that competitive stance or whatever. But that takes a lot to maintain to be a top 25 program. I mean, Radar knows. Listen to her.
Oh man, she's got so many opinions on this right now. Yeah, you're right. I mean, what, 8 straight bowl games, 7 straight bowl games?
That's something like that. Yeah.
And that streak is on the verge of collapsing. There were a lot of going into the season. I think there were a lot of reasons why so many people were thinking Mississippi State could be one of the best teams in the West. It's not a fluke. They weren't just some sort of this could be a good underdog story. Let's all root for them. No. People looked at it and said they've got incredible defensive talent, especially in the front 7. They've got a record-breaking quarterback. All of those things. But you look at the schedule, and the schedule should have been in Mississippi State's favor. The schedule 100%. Should have been. Yeah, you look at it. You look at the conference in particular. Let's say the conference opponents are broken down into like a couple of tiers as far as like difficulty goes. And you've got, let's say, I'm pulling up the schedule real quick to make sure that I get everything right. So let's say you've got the top tier of like extremely difficult opponents, right? And that is Auburn, LSU, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no question, that's how it is. At the beginning of the season, we figured LSU would not be very good. They're rising above that for sure. So that's
speak for yourself. I definitely called that. I don't know what you're talking about. I definitely saw that coming.
Auburn. I mean, I don't know what to make of Auburn because I still feel like they could easily go 8-5, which is their tradition. And then Bama's Bama. Then you go to like the next tier, and the next tier is SEC games that should be winnable. Like, should be not even winnable, but should be victories.
Yeah,
on paper at the beginning of the season. That's Kentucky. That's Florida. That's Texas A&M. And then you have the next tier, which is Arkansas. They're their own tier because, good Lord, they're just rough. There's bad. And then the wild cards, Ole Miss. You never know what's going to happen in the stupid Egg Bowl. It's just how it is. So the thought process was, all right, if you can win 2 of the top 2 tier like games, if you go into A&M, Florida, Kentucky, if you win 2 of those, that's what you need for success. If you're able to win, hopefully 2 of the Auburn, LSU, Alabama games, then that's the like truly successful season. We've lost 2 of the middle tier games. I mean, is the season done? Especially now looking at back-to-back top 10 opponents.
Well, you tell me, Joseph. We have Auburn this weekend. Yeah. That's a loss. We go to LSU. That's for sure a loss. We host Texas A&M after that. That's 3 straight losses after that. Before we play La Tech the week after the following week.
Yeah.
So then after that, then we have Bama at Bama, then Arkansas, and then we go to Ole Miss.
Yep.
Where are the W's?
Right. Exactly.
Where are the wins? Like you're just saying. So yeah, to answer your question. Yeah. I mean, unless the only way I see this season being salvaged, we're just going to have to identify that our team is built around the running game, and all the offense should just be Kylan Hill and Aries Williams, direct snaps. Why not?
Yeah. Because, I mean, if you do that, I mean, if you establish a run, then you can throw those passes.
Yeah.
Look at Stephen F. Austin, Kansas State, and Louisiana Lafayette. I mean, look at those 3 games. All 3 of those games ran first, establish a run, then you're able to throw a few of those vertical routes that you want to throw. It's not. This is.
What irks me about Joe Moorhead, at least what I see right now, because he's sitting there. Oh yeah, hey Nick, how big's your ring size? Right, go get your ring. Go get the ring size, dude. You're not going to win the Heisman with Nick Fitzgerald. I wish that was a reality, but he's not a passing quarterback, which those guys get all the bling. All right. He's a hard-nosed, hard worker, running quarterback that can pass every now and then, and that's the way it should be with them. I want to see a two-headed beast.
Let's think: Johnny Manziel, Jameis Winston, Lamar Jackson, Robert Griffin III.
Yeah, but they all had huge arms and are accurate and all that kind of stuff. Especially the years that they win the Heisman. You know, the years that the second years they don't, like Lamar Jackson and Johnny Manziel, they fall off a little bit in terms of accuracy and all that kind of stuff. I think I'm not looking at it right now, but
yeah.
I feel
I'm gonna disagree with you on that one.
So?
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with you. But
this is over. I'm done. I quit.
I don't even want to hear from you again. Get out. I can't believe I did this.
What makes you? What am I saying that you think that is egregious?
I don't think anything's egregious.
Totally.
Yeah, I don't think anything's egregious at all. But I do think. I mean, I like that. You know, Moorhead said the fact that Moorhead said the whole like, what's your ring size and clear your shot for the Heisman. You know, that's to instill confidence in the returning players. You know, that's a statement of like, I'm going to do what I can for you. And he's not right now, which is frustrating.
No, I know.
But I mean, that comes down to, as far as the tools of Fitzgerald. I mean, he's a great runner and then has an extremely strong arm. Can really hurl the ball downfield if he needs to. And that's why I go back to he's been proving that he can accurately deliver on those passes.
Yeah.
And wide receivers are not.
They're not
catching the favor.
And I think the other problem too, I agree with what you're saying. But I also like, we need to, if I was the head coach, and yes, this is my resume, if you're listening, I would love to make $1 million to lose.
Yes.
Totally. But no, I would love to have like at least Kylan Hill or Aries William to get 15 plus touches a game.
Yeah.
One or the other, you know?
Yep.
And that's not happening right now. It's like they're both getting possibly 7, 8.
Right.
You know? Something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the Moorhead offense has always been built around the run pass options. Every play has a run and pass option built into it, and I get that, but sometimes you just really need to run a lot of read options, and not even think about passing the ball. You know, you got to have a little bit less complicated. I mean, it's a complicated offense.
It is. It very much is.
Yeah. Don't dive head first into it.
Yeah, we need to dial back the RPO. Like, I get it in theory, and it makes sense, but I also know that crap takes a lot of practice and time. Two things that I don't think that this team has quite had yet.
And that's the issue. I mean, you're in year one where you inherited a top 25 program with a quarterback who is about to, you know, break a record for most rushing yards he's about to break a Tim Tebow record.
Yeah.
You know, that says something. You've got these tools at your disposal. Stop trying to cram a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. You know, there were a lot of questions that were raised against Kentucky. A lot of them we thought at the time could be chalked up to the fact that Kentucky's a better team than people expected. Mm-hmm. But we're sitting here the next week, and none of those questions were answered.
Not one. Not one.
Yeah, I don't want to play the blame game either, but someone is still responsible for that.
Yeah.
And if you got a bunch of questions, you know, the questions like that, it comes back down to coaching more than anything else.
No, that's what makes me so upset and very worrisome of the future. You know?
Yep, I know. And here's the thing: like, if Moorhead right now corrects all of the stuff the questions that were raised against Kentucky and exemplified against Florida, because Kentucky and Florida have given every other opponent a game plan, a blueprint for how to defeat Mississippi State. If Moorhead corrects all of that and starts playing towards his team's strengths more, then you look down the list and it's like, well, I mean, Auburn could be a victory then, because Auburn's offense is struggling.
Yeah.
LSU, I mean, it's in Baton Rouge, so there's no telling. But LSU could be a victory because I still think LSU's defense is not quite as good as they've looked so far. But
I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
We'll see. You know, but like A&M becomes a very winnable game again. if some of these questions are answered. And that's the big if. At this point, I don't know how much faith I put in questions being answered.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, even if, I mean, Mississippi State would have to win out to salvage the season.
Essentially.
Yeah, because right now the pieces were in place for them to be 5-0.
Yeah.
Going into the difficult stretch of Auburn, LSU, Texas A&M, skip a week, and then Bama.
Yeah. I mean, if they play like they did on Friday, if the offense doesn't show up, like we're looking at 3 more losses.
Yeah.
We're 0-5. Easy. Yeah, there's no doubt.
Yeah, if the offense doesn't show up, it's an easy loss to Auburn, LSU, Bama. It's a most likely loss to A&M. And I mean, quite honestly, if the offense can't do anything against at all, then it's going to be a nasty game against Ole Miss.
Yeah.
So you're looking at if the offensive issues are not corrected at all, that's 4 losses easy, and probably a 5th one in the Egg Bowl.
Boy, I wish that we had a surefire wide receiver that could catch passes, and that was not that was actually from Starkville. He who shall not be named on this podcast.
Yeah, I don't want him.
I don't want him. No,
if he's gonna
I just want somebody to catch a pass, man.
Yeah, I wish Keith Mixon was 4 inches taller. That's what I want. I want Keith Mixon to not be 5'8".
Yeah,
because that man runs routes well, got good hands, but he's just short. And so, we're out here. Yeah, I wish. This is what I would want to see. I want to see Mississippi State walk out there, Fitzgerald, in the shotgun. Aries Williams on one side, Kylan Hill on the other side.
Yeah.
You got a tight end, Farrod Green here. You only have 2 wide receivers. You got Stephen Guidry and you got Keith Mixon, because those are the only 2 wide receivers you can trust. And you just use those 4 or those 5, Fitz, Williams, Hill, Guidry, Mixon. That's it. Yeah. And you don't even think about putting anyone else out there until they've proven they deserve it.
You know what? I want to see, Joseph. I'm actually gonna take what you said and double down. I want a wishbone Nick Fitzgerald retro high school offense. All right.
Yeah.
I want to see a Georgia Tech dominating offensive scheme, the SEC, just nothing but triple option.
Yep.
Throw 3 passes the whole game.
And then and the moment you do, everyone is so confused by it. It's a long, nice, wide open bomb that Osiris Mitchell drops.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, at the end here, I mean, there's been a few message board people who, and then some glorified message board people, aka the writers at Saturday Down South, trying to talk about whether Keaton Thompson would be a better fit than Nick Fitzgerald moving forward. Do you see anything in Keaton that you think would fix any of these issues?
No. No, not at all. I see that Keaton got his braces off, I think.
Oh, that's cool.
That might help.
Good for him.
I mean, for starters, why would you not? You cannot replace Nick right now. He's this close to breaking this stupid record. Mm-hmm. What? You're dumb. You're dumb if you take him out. You gotta have. We need to have a Mississippi State all-time rusher right there at the top of that list.
Right.
Season be damned. That very much is so important legacy-wise to look at there and be like, hey, Nick Fitzgerald, nobody's going to remember the season, especially now, other than maybe one of the biggest letdowns. What they will remember and what they will see is that here's the career leading touchdown, rushing quarterback, whatever, for the next however long it gets broken again. So is Keaton going to come and replace it and make it better? Nah, dog. Come on. This is no Tony Romo, Dak Prescott situation. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's nothing that Keaton does better than Fitzgerald. You know what I mean?
Not that I see.
They're just kind of the same player, with like some minor differences. Like Keaton is not as big and strong. He's not as strong. I mean,
No.
Fitzgerald probably has a solid 15, 20 pounds on him as far as
Right.
just, that size guy. He can't sling a ball as, he doesn't have a strong an arm. I mean, wasn't that Louisiana, the Lafayette game where he comes in and just short arms a pass that gets picked?
Yeah.
I remember that. There's nothing he could do. I don't know why. I think people love blaming quarterbacks. I mean, well, look at Prescott with the Cowboys. People love blaming Dak Prescott for the Cowboys' worries, for troubles, and then completely ignoring the fact that the Cowboys have no wide receivers, a bad defense, a terrible owner, bad management, and a mediocre coach.
Well, sticking with the NFL, look at Tampa Bay with Fitz Magic, right?
Yes.
Like they've named Jameis Winston the starting quarterback, but like it still doesn't address the fact that you got beat. They got killed, dude.
Yeah.
They got killed last weekend, and I don't think that had a whole lot to do with Fitzpatrick. Their defense just did not show up. So I don't know. This whole blaming Nick for these problems. Nick can't make the guys catch the balls. Like there's so many that go right at their fingertips. Hell, one even hit the dude in the face.
Yep.
Like that happened last game. Like hit him in the helmet. I don't know.
Astounding to me.
It is. It's a shame. It's a shame that there's one thing to be said of Dan that he never, ever, ever, ever did. He never recruited a standout wide receiver.
No.
Never.
Nope. He got guys that he, looked at and felt like he could work with.
No.
That fit what he wanted to do, but he was always going to, be 60, 65% and run the ball anyway.
Yeah.
I think that's why he didn't necessarily go after A.J. Brown much. If it's true what A.J. Brown said in recruiting that Mississippi State showed no interest in him, then it seems like that's entirely because of Dan Mullen just looking at a player and deciding that's not the type of player I want.
Yeah.
Whew. Well,
Radar
is restless, so we're going to wrap up this recording session because she needs to get her energy out. And I need her to not bite my hand off. Not how that goes. Yeah, frustrating weekend for the Dogs. A lot of questions to be answered. We don't have any of those answers, but we can at least vent about it. Try to make us feel a little bit better, like we feel like we actually know something.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I did have a kind of a existential come to Jesus moment this weekend. Like, I've been wasting all this time on watching football and talking about it. So I started watching this David Copperfield mini series about magic, and it's changed my life. And so I've given up football, and now I'm just following competitive magic.
So tune in next week to your brand new David Copperfield competitive magic podcast called The Weekly Pessimist. We're excited to have that new series on Running Up the Clock. No, I actually did too, and I'm going to record I wrote out a little something like I don't know, like a podcast essay or something I'm going to record and turn into an overtime episode later on.
Yes, I love it.
Definitely had an existential, come to Jesus thing as well on the drive home from Starkville on Saturday. But I had a friend, I'll close with this. I had a friend, and this is really what I think frustrates me more than anything else.
Oh, Radar, get it.
Pissed. I had a friend I was sitting with watching the game who said that he was never surprised whenever Mullen's name popped up with like Tennessee job or Florida job or whatever, because they're places that will always have more resources. And I looked at that and I was like, okay, yeah, like resources. I don't know what that means at this point.
Like, do they have more ore, you think? Or
I think that's it. I think it's like I think it was Settlers of Catan, and like they just had more grain.
Did they have they have a lot of wheat cards?
They had a lot of wheat cards, they built the longest road or whatever it is. But that's what's frustrating. I think a lot of people were really upset because this was the chance for Mississippi State to stick it to a team that had more quote unquote resources, whatever that may be. Ignoring the fact that State has a a good practice facility and expanded stadium and all of that. It's Florida has more resources, and that at the end of the day, resources. This is America. Resources always win.
That's true. I'm sorry. I'm watching you be destroyed by your dog.
She's beating the crap out of me. Let's wrap this one up. This is the Weekly Pessimist, your Mississippi State podcast on Running Out the Clock. Tune in next week as we discuss everything that happens in Week 6 of college football. I'm going to get out of here before I die. Roe, thanks for joining me.
Yeah.